Namaskar, this is Ranjit. If you look at the most popular combat sports around, like boxing, wrestling, judo, MMA, etc., one might be forced to think that boxing is relatively simple. This is because it eliminates a lot of the complexity of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, um, kicks, etc., and focuses just on punches. But if you look at it deeply, the sport of boxing is at least about four important types of battles. This is what we will spend time on today to understand nuances that someone new to boxing may miss. The first battle of consequence is between the punches and the guard. Of course, it happens both ways. Boxing is actually about just four types of punches: the jab, delivered by the front arm, the cross, delivered by the back arm, the hook, and the uppercut. The jab and cross are straight punches. The jab is the most common punch because it has got the least distance to travel. The cross is a stronger straight punch delivered by the back arm, has got more of a distance to travel but is a stronger punch. The hook and the uppercut are limited in range. They're shorter punches, right? But they deliver more power and are more likely to finish fights. Those are your attacker's options, right? Punches, the basic punches. If you look at the defender, they basically defend these punches with a guard. The guard protects the area from the rib to the head of the defender. The defender has options like keeping a narrow guard, a wide guard. A narrow guard protects him against basically the straight punches, and a wider guard against the curved punches. In this battle, what are the differentiating factors? If you look at it, the attacker is differentiated by 4 or 5 skills. There is speed, there is power, there definitely is a part of guard manipulation, the ability to move the opponent's guard and then attack. There is a factor of timing, and there is a factor of accuracy. The defender, again, we will talk about footwork separately as a second battle, but that's an important part. But just by the guard, the defender has to keep an active guard and make sure that he's able to protect himself from as many punches as possible. You have some defenders who will keep a guard a little bit further away. This takes the shock of the punches. Or you can keep it really close, in which case you'll be able to block most of the punches, but the punches are likely to kind of get through a bit, right? The shock is likely to come in and kind of still hurt you a little bit. The second battle in boxing is one of angles. The battle for superior angle is one of the defining battles of pretty much every combat sport out there. In boxing, the battle of angles plays out basically as the zone which is there in front of every boxer where his attacks have their maximum power. Right? This is an area right in front of the boxer, and an area which is roughly, think of it like a cube. And this cube is then referred to as the zone of death. The battle for angles is essentially exposing yourself the least to your opponent's zone of death while keeping your opponent in your zone of death. Right. So how do you do this? You do this in essentially 3 ways. One, by your stance, posture, movements, etc. Second, by your footwork, right? Your ability to move around in an efficient and fast manner. And third, by your head movements. So the first thing is about stance, right? For example, you can have a narrow exposure to your opponent, which kind of exposes very less of your body to your opponent's attacks and the part which you can defend, and while keeping your opponent exposed, right, to your attacks. There is also the aspect of your stance. How wide do you keep your legs? Wider legs, a wider stance gives you more power in your attacks, whereas a narrow stance makes it easy for you to move around. The second aspect is about your footwork. There are a bunch of movements like pivots, like pendulum steps, like switches that boxers use to be able to efficiently make better angles where your essentially your opponent is not able to shoot you while you are able to shoot your opponent. Essentially your best punches are now aimed at the opponent, and these are going to play out in microseconds. You will see if you look at a peekaboo video of that's a style of boxing that Tyson used. You will see Tyson get these advantageous angles for seconds and the match is over. The third way in which you get better angles is through head movements. So there are slips, there are bobs and weaves, there are head pulls, and there are a bunch of other head movements that boxers use to keep themselves safe from the opponent's attacks. And these are things to look out for in a boxing match. The third battle is one of range. Each boxer, depending on their preferred attacks, preferred punches, etc., have a range at which they operate best. This is a function of the style of the boxer. So there are outboxers who essentially work on a long range, typically long-armed boxers, right, who work with straight punches. There are swarmers who essentially, like Mike Tyson or my favorite boxers, are able to move within that range and then attack these outboxers, right, with strong punches, essentially operating with hooks, uppercuts, etc. And then there are sluggers. Sluggers are essentially boxers who are focused on delivering maximum damage through an opportunity they get. And then there are counter punchers. Counter punchers are probably probably unfair to say that, but the highest level of boxers. So essentially are able to make use of openings that boxers leave when they kind of attack. So for example, when you make a jab, there is an opening here, and there is a small amount of time that the opposite boxer, your opponent, has to take advantage of that shot. Any attack that you make leaves an opening, right, which your opponent can take advantage of. And then there is this beautiful game of feints, right? So you act like you're punching and your opponent kind of defends, and then you take that opportunity to make an attack. So that is a very high level skill in boxing, and it's beautiful when you are able to appreciate those in a boxing match. The fourth and last battle that we talk about today is the energy battle. Now, this is also a function of the kind of fighter that someone is. The strong, powerful fighters typically coming in and starting very aggressively, coming in with those punches, right? That's one style. But there is also the kind of fighters who are more durable, who have very good cardio, etc. And you see them weather the storm and then attack back, where the strong, powerful fighter is a little bit tired after the initial fury, right? So there is this whole game of energy management which goes on through the fight. These guys are extremely tough, extremely durable, but there is still, at that level of competition, there is definitely an element of how much energy can you expend, right? Of course, the aggressive striker also has this opportunity to create damage with his opponent, which he can leverage for later rounds. So this is a strategic choice that a fighter and his team must make, considering the opponent and a whole range of other factors. So this is something that you have to look out for to be able to appreciate. To summarize, we talked about 4 kinds of battles to look out for in every boxing match. The battle between the punch and the guard, right? How are the fighters able to attack and defend themselves skillfully? The fight for angles, which is about stance, width, right? The stance, the level that they expose, the sideways movements, the feet movements, the head movements that they utilize to be able to expose the opponent in terms of being able to land the attacks while keeping themselves out of harm's way. We talked about the range battle, which is a preference of the range that a boxer wants to maintain so that he can land his best punches while probably keeping himself out of the best punches of his opponents. And finally, we talked about the energy management battle, which is a strategy that the fighter must evolve so that they can, create the best chances for a win through the various rounds and through the duration of the match itself. I hope this is useful to you when you watch your next boxing match and I've been able to help you appreciate that match a whole lot better. See you around and thank you for listening in.